Hey guys, this is Caustra here. Yes, I know that it's been a while since I've uploaded, but for good reason. I've been working on something I think the Geometry Dash community really needs. A video comparing 60Hz and 144Hz, but a well-researched one that didn't take 5 minutes to make, unlike most of the videos on this subject. I am a 144Hz player, for all of you that don't know, and I can say that most people have their conceptions of 144Hz wrong. Before we get into this, leave a like if this is something you want me to do more often, where I go into depth about the science behind Geometry Dash. If you like it, I'll make it into a series. If not, then this will be the only episode you'll ever have to see. Unlike the other videos out there, I will be including 75Hz, 100Hz, and 120Hz as well. Let's start off with something very few talk about, and that's the science behind higher refresh rates. When your refresh rate is 60Hz, it means you have a 16.66667 millisecond delay on what you are seeing. As your refresh rate increases, however, this decreases. 13.333 milliseconds delay on 75Hz, 10 milliseconds delay on 100Hz, 8.333 milliseconds delay on 120Hz, and finally 6.944 milliseconds of delay on 144Hz. If we compare 60Hz to 144Hz, that's a phenomenal difference. 10 milliseconds may not seem like a lot, but in reality it is. But we don't have to stop there. These facts are assuming that your monitor has a 1 millisecond response time. For those who are unaware, this is how fast an image can be drawn on your monitor from your computer. Most 60Hz monitors have a response time of anywhere between 5 milliseconds and 40 milliseconds. That means the delay on a 60Hz monitor can reach up to 56 milliseconds of delay. That's insane. So far, we have proven that it's not just refresh rate, but a combination of the refresh rate and response time that affects gameplay in GD. I would like to have proven this theory a little more with some real stats that I would have recorded, but unfortunately I only own my one 144Hz monitor, and I don't know how to purposely lower the response time, and I honestly wouldn't want to. Another thing people don't consider is your input to the game that you use when playing the game. If you are using any form of wireless device to play the game, that adds more onto your delay. It varies between devices. Wired devices like wired mice, keyboards, and gamepads usually have no more than 1 or 2 milliseconds of response time to them, but again, it varies. So far, I have explained quite a few things, but there's something I just can't explain yet. If you play on an iPhone, iPhones have 1080p 60Hz screens. I'm not sure about Android, but I'd imagine they'd have the same, possibly even better. Point is, I've played on 1080p 60Hz on PC and mobile, and yet when I play on PC, it makes a massive difference. What is the reason behind it? Could it be the screen size? Could it be a response time issue? I wasn't quite sure, but then I came up with one of the most crazy ideas. So crazy that it actually made sense. It's not the devices itself that make the difference, it's the human behind them. Let me explain this. When you play on mobile, chances are good that you use your right thumb, correct? Or if you're left-handed, you're going to use your left thumb, but it doesn't matter. When you use a mouse on the PC, I'd take a wild guess you use your index finger. And that's where I think the mobile versus PC difference lies. The joints you have in your thumb are different than in your index finger, and that's just how humans evolved. The thumb wasn't designed for speed, but for other things like grip. To test this, I did a clicking speed test. Just to warn everyone in advance, I have a very slow CPS, or clicks per second, compared to everyone else, so don't worry about it too much. Using my thumb, I was able to achieve a 6.8 CPS, and I was able to achieve 7.9 CPS without any form of jitter clicking using my index finger. I have also found many articles that support this evidence. When people usually are timing things such as swimming competitions, for example, their secret technique is to use their index finger as naturally it has the best response time. Okay, so what that all means is that the mouse is the superior input for playing GD. Whether you use a gamepad, the spacebar, or the up key, you will always be beat by a wired mouse. But there's still at least one more side of the story. Mouse ergonomics. The more comfortable a mouse feels in your hand, and the more natural your hand feels while using it, the faster CPS you can achieve. A recent trend in Geometry Dash right now is the G502 mouse. You can definitely see why. It's a specialized wired gaming mouse. It automatically comes out on top of other inputs for the game because of the fact that it's a mouse, but it's also sturdy, a pretty high quality, and it's also very ergonomic for the hand. I do not own this mouse and cannot prove these allegations. I am just going off some sources I've talked to prior to this. Another category that hasn't been touched on is the refresh cycle speed differences, or what are called 144Hz bugs or 60Hz bugs in Geometry Dash. Basically, any refresh rate that isn't a direct multiple of 60, such as 75, 100, and 144, will have extremely slight differences in speed. This doesn't make a real difference in-game, except for in a few levels like Retention by Woogie and Bloodbath by Riot. But what this does is actually shift the game completely. When you're playing at 75, 100, or 144 Hz, it makes the biggest difference because it's almost like cheating and abusing the system without really technically cheating. Without realizing it, you are changing the speed of the game in your favor, and that's partially why straight fly is easier on 144 Hz. But through my extensive testing over the past week, I found one last thing I'd like to improve. It's the most bizarre thing in this video so far, but when you break it down, it makes sense. What I'm talking about is learning styles. The 3 learning styles: visual, auditory, and sensory, or whatever you call it, affect how you play Geometry Dash a lot more than you thought. If you are a visual learner, you're going to benefit the most from a change in monitor refresh rate. The people who claim to experience huge differences in skill when upgrading from 60Hz to 144Hz are usually these people. And it makes sense too. By enhancing the visuals and enhancing the frames per second, you are enhancing their learning speeds and their skill development. Auditory learners are the ones who do best when a level is synced with its music, hence the auditory part of the learning. Despite Geometry Dash being a music-based game, auditory learners often do worse in GD than the others simply because not every level is flawlessly synced. And finally, the sensory learners. These are the ones who learn from doing. They are usually the most consistent with their skills when beating harder demons, which allows them to beat them in lower attempt counts. But if you're an auditory or sensory learner, you probably won't find yourself improving much with an increase in refresh rate. So there you have it. I simply can't find anything else on the subject, but I believe I have truly closed the case on this one. You don't need 144 Hz to get better. You only need to find out what type of learner you are, and then you must play to your strengths. If you're a visual learner, go buy a new monitor with 144 Hz and a 1 millisecond response time. If you're a sensory learner, go buy a G502 mouse, as its ergonomics will aid you. If you're an auditory learner, well, rip you, man. Thanks for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed. I put a lot of effort in this one.